Hello and welcome back to our series on beginning app script for HR, brought to you by Prairie HR Solutions. My name is Jake Finger, Principal Consultant here at Prairie HR Solutions, and in this video, I'd like to carry on where we left off with our dependent drop-down boxes. Currently, we have two dependent drop-down boxes. The second box is dependent on the value of the first box. So if we change, something, then this second box here will then update. See, we can select archive record, update record, and then if we change it to candidate, it's going to be different selections. And then what we did is we chose people analytics, and then depending on what an individual selected here, it would trigger another function that would then populate, just for placeholder purposes, the value of that cell. And it also kicks off some UIs. But it would set the value of this cell, this drop-down box, in this E2 cell, and also populate a specific division. And then when we did division level, it would go through and do the same thing, populate here with the division level, and then this pulled up all of our data and put it in another thing. So what I'd like to do now is clean the rest of that up. I mean, those were just placeholders. I would like to come in here first and focus on this company level and have some specific things occur. And the first thing that I would like to have occur is, since we're kind of making this a very light dashboard, again, this isn't really designed to create a product, but basically just lay a foundation of operational knowledge for AppScript, as well as some code snippets. So what I want to do is I want to take from C1 all the way down to the last row of data, all the way over to the last column of data, and clear it, and then populate employee headcount, and then populate how many employees we have. And then when we do division level, I would like to clear it again, do employee headcount, and then up here, I'd like to put our divisions. And then once we get that done, in the future video, we can actually consolidate all this to where we're not actually populating anything, but we can create a third dependent drop-down box using the same concept that we did to create the first two, to where this is just division. So it's only going to appear when somebody puts division level, and then that division level will then validate or open up a validation here with a list of all the divisions that an individual can select from. And then that way we don't need to have this populated fully, unless we have it set up. But for now, let's go ahead and clear this and then repopulate it, because then we can get into other formatting styles, because you'll see that this is bold. So when we set this employee headcount, we are going to have to change the font weight to bold. And then we'll do some analytics and have this automatically populate with how many employees we have. So let's go back over here to our code, and let's create a variable. And let's call that variable dashboard frame, I guess. That'll work. And what this dashboard frame is going to be is the range of that dashboard, starting at row 1, column 3, which is C, and we want to include the last row. Now we're starting at row 1, so we don't really need to -1 or anything, and it's really going down to the last row and then adding anyway, and then we're clearing it. So it doesn't really matter if we subtract it or it ends right at the last row, or the last column for that matter. So there we go. Now we have it stored in a variable. We don't need to get the value of it or anything, because we just want to adjust its focus on that variable, which is that range. And what we want to do is, every time this pop data function is fired, which it gets fired from anytime there's a change here in this A4 cell, which is that second dependent dropdown. We want to clear that data so we can have that run immediately after the function is called. So we can go to dashboard frame, and then what we want to do is clear the content of that frame. Now, once we clear it, we're going to have to repopulate it depending on which is selected. So when somebody selects this company level, let's get rid of these UIs here. And we don't want this value to be set anymore. So once somebody selects this company level, we need to populate some of those fields. So the first thing we need to do once the company level is selected is go to our dashboard, not our dashboard frame, our dashboard variable, and then we need to get the range of whatever that cell is that contains this employee headcount. And that is row 2, column 4. So come back over here, row 2, column 4, and we want to set that value to employee headcount. And if you remember, that employee headcount is bolded. So we need to do some sort of styling to it. And we can do that by continuing on this line here. And we can go dot set. And as you start typing set, you'll realize that there is a lot of things that we can set. We can set nearly every format. We can set wrapping. We can set the vertical alignment, horizontal, text direction, hyperlinks. We can set a number of things to include comments and notes. But what we're looking for is we are looking for a weight. So we want to set the font weight. Now we're using the singular version of that because we only have one range. And that is a method. So we need the parentheses, and it's going to take a string, and that string is going to contain either bold or normal. So bold is obviously bold. Normal is obviously unbold. So let's set this to bold. And then another thing, and it has to be lowercase because that's how it matches. And another thing we can do is we can actually set, let's also give it some italics. So let's set the style. And that style can either be italic or normal. Let's make it italic. So we got rid of the frame, we cleared everything, and then we reset this employee headcount back with bold and italic. So we'll see how that looks. Now what we want to do is put the value of how many employees we have at the company level. So if we come back over here to our sheet, that's pretty simple if you think about it, because really we just need to count how many rows we have. So we should have 15 employees. And if we think about how our data is going to come to us, it's going to come to us as a two-dimensional array. And this two-dimensional array is going to have inner arrays, of course. And each inner array is going to be a row of data. So really all we need to do is count those inner arrays. We need to count that two-dimensional array by its length. So actually, let's come back here and maybe I'll illustrate what I'm meaning by actually showing the array. So let's just create a test function here. Call this test. Now, the one thing that we're going to have to do is, since we are looking at the app script screen, this is our focus on our web browser. If we run a code from this, like let's save this, and then let's try to run that test function, we're going to get a data error. And it's going to be an exception error, excuse me. And it's saying it can't call the spreadsheet app get UI from this context. And that's because our focus isn't on the spreadsheet, it's on here. Remember, Google is web-based. So we're focused on this screen, but if we were focused on the spreadsheet, we could call it. But since we're not, we actually can't run a function here because it's trying to call this. So for now, let's just comment that out. Now we'll be able to run this and you'll see we don't get that error. So let's grab this variable, which contains all of our data, and let's just log that out. And then we'll run this again and we'll see what we have. So to get the full count of employees, is we don't need the full count of all these data here. What we need is the full count of all of each of these inner arrays. So this is one row. This is obviously 2 rows, 3 rows. So we just need to count how many arrays we have in this two-dimensional array. So essentially what we're needing is the length of this. And what the length is it defines the property. It gets a property of this two-dimensional array. So this is our two-dimensional array. And what we can do is we can simply hit dot length, and you can see that the length is a property of this employee data. And it is just what it says. It is how many are there. So if we put length there and run it, we should have 15, and we sure do. So there are 15 rows of data, or 15 arrays, which are rows, and that's what we're looking for. So what we can actually do is take this employee data.length and actually populate it in cell 25. So we can just go dashboard SS get range 2-5, and then we can set the value of that cell to employee data dot length. Got to add a dot there. There we go. So now what will happen is after we clear it, we will then populate employee headcount, set it to bold and italic, and then we'll put the length of our employee data two-dimensional array, which will give us how many people we have in our company. So let's save this. We'll probably go up here. Well, yeah, we'll go up here and remove that. And then let's come back to our sheet here. And then let's refresh this just to make sure we catch up all of our code. So now what's going to happen is we'll go to our people analytics. The second we change this, it is going to fire off that pop data function. And the first thing that function is going to do is clear this. And we can, put stuff here. And you'll see that it'll clear this whole thing. And then it's going to put employee headcount up here. It should be bold and italic. And then it should put the number 15, however many employees we have, right there. So let's give it a go and see how it works. Company level. Yep. I like it being italics. That's good. And 15. And then if we change it to division, all the division is going to do is just remove that. And there we go. And then it runs the rest of its code. So good. So what we would like to do on the division piece for right now is to populate employee headcount again. And instead of populating a number right away, what we want to do is populate the headings up here. So each one of these headings is going to be our division. So we would have, finance, HR, IT, so on and so on. And I'm going to hard code this in here just for the sake of instructions. There's another way we can do this by, setting an array and setting the values of it. But for now, we're just going to hard code it in here. Just for the sake of instructions. So let's go back here and do that. Let's come back and go down. So what we need to do is do employee headcount again. Down here at the second value, this division level, and we don't need this alert anymore. So the employee headcount is going to occur, but what we need to do is starting at row 1, column 5. So employee headcount is going to populate right here. Starting here, we need to start working on our division head titles. So let's start by doing that. And maybe what we can do is we'll just leave the font bold for right now. So let's copy this. And then what we're going to need to do here is start building this stuff out. So this is going to be 1 and 5, and this one is going to be finance. And then this one, the next one, is going to be 1, 6, and that's going to be HR. And I'm going to go ahead and pause the video while I build the rest of these out. You guys probably don't want to sit here and watch me do that. So let me pause the video and then I'll get this done. Okay, there we go. I built them all out. As you can see, I started here at 1, 5, which is 1 column over and 1 row above our employee head count, and then went across that row and populated our division. So that's only going to occur when we select the division level. So let's save this. And then we will go back to our sheet here. And let's create the drop down so we can pick up any code that we might have missed. And select people analytics. So now we'll do company level. Should populate 15. Awesome. And division level, it will remove this and then populate our headers. And as you can see, that's exactly what it did. So what we can do now is go through and create a filter for each one of these. And we're going to do this first the long way prior to actually creating a secondary drop-down box for individuals to select. Because remember, this is internal. And what we may do actually is, internal, and we'll just go through and create each instance. Like finance is going to equal a filter for finance, and then the length of that new array, and so on. So let's go back here to our code, and I want to go over real quick in this video, and then the next video we will build out that filtering function. I want to go over how filter actually works. Now remember, we did a filter example. So let's come down here to our test and let's paste that filter in here and refresh our minds on what actually is occurring here. So we declared a variable, and that variable, let's call it IT since that's what it is here. And then we declared another variable called IT division. We took the employee data and we filtered that two-dimensional array using a callback function with a name that we chose of division. We returned that division at the third index, which is the division column, if that column or that third index equals that variable, which is IT. So if we were to log this, and we're not logging comp div, we already know what that is. What we're logging is this, because we want it to go through and filter and then return this array with only that filtered data. So now if we were to run this test, you'll see it's going to go through. Oops, there we go again. So let me come back up here and I'll comment this out. I'll probably just leave it commented. We don't need alerts. And then we run it. You'll see that it ran that first one, but then it filtered only 14. So what we can do is, now that we have this array with only IT in it, we can do dot length, the same thing that we did up here, run it, and it'll tell us how many people we actually have it with that filter. And if we come back over to our sheet, it said we had 5 in IT, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So all we need to do now is populate 5 inside that cell, the appropriate cell. So let's go ahead and build out that code. And for right now, we're going to have to do the long way and hard code this and do let IT division equals that. And instead of this comp division, we'll have to hard code IT, HR, and whatnot, and then set the value of IT division dot length to that cell, to the cell below it. So we have all of our cells populated. So now what we need to do is we need to go through and set all of these variables. And yes, this is quite a bit. And we can set these variables up here to run and be filled with early. This is not comp division. This is going to be IT. And then we can create another one. This is not going to be the IT division. This is going to be the fin division. And this is going to be equal to finance. Okay, so we can't actually, I see what's going on here. Yep, my mistake. So we can't actually return multiple things. We'll have to build an if statement. So you can only return, you can only return one thing. But if you look, we have a function here that has no end. So if we were to close that and do that, there we go. That's fine. Because with a normal function, a function can only return one thing. But when you look at this function is actually this function here is actually a callback function, not a normal function. So see, we're missing this part right here. And that's why we're getting that little error here. So what we can do is simply hit that. There we go. At the very end. But since this is a callback function, we can return multiple things, at least it looks like, because we're only returning for this callback function within this division. So that's the reason why we're able to return over and over and over. So now let's create this. I'm going to pause this and create the rest of them so you don't have to watch me do it. Okay, good. So we have this now built out. As you can see, all I did was copy and paste, a whole bunch of stuff here. And now what we can do is call these variables and set them into each one here. So what we can do is we can go into our dashboard, SS, get range, and the range we're trying to get for our first one is finance, obviously, and that's going to be right below, so column 2, 5, and we want to set the value to fin division dot length. And then what we want to do is grab this and copy this and do the rest for 2-6, and 2-6 is going to be HR. And you come down here and do 2-7, which is going to be IT. Same exact thing here for 8. And that's going to be marketing. And as you can see, I'm just simply using the variable here, just like we did below. It's going to be 2, 9. This should be, is it ops or ops? And then this next one is going to be sales and 210. So now what's going to happen is now we're going to populate all of our titles, and then we're going to, well, actually, before we populate our data, we're going to fill these variables by filtering this data based on that and then creating a new array. And then we're going to use each one of these arrays as appropriate to set the value within the cells underneath our titles. So let's go back here to our sheet here. I get into a habit of actually refreshing everything just because when I write script, I want to make sure that it gets picked up. Sometimes it does it, sometimes it doesn't. I just get into a habit of doing it. So we do people analytics, and let's do our company level first. It should remove all that. 15 employee headcount. Now let's do our division. And then as you can see, it does the employee headcount. It populates the heading. And then we can go in here and look. We know we have 5 people in IT, 1 person in marketing, 2 people in sales. So let's go over there and look at that. 1 person in marketing, 2 people in sales, and 1, 2, 3 people in HR. So when we go back over here, 4 people in HR. Am I forgetting somebody? Oh, I am. Our analyst. Yep, 4 people in HR. But essentially what we have just created was a way for us to automatically populate data. So I'm going to end this video here. In the next video, what I'm going to do is take another approach at doing this by having an individual, just for now, an individual user create or select another third level drop down, because having a third level drop down will allow an external person or somebody who specifically doesn't want to know anything about IT or operations or marketing or whatnot, but wants to drill into, say, finance or HR and only show that data, they'll be able to with this third level drop down. It'll be nice. It'll be nice to have a code snippet to take down the level another degree. That way you can continue it on if you need it. So I hope this episode was helpful. And if it was, please hit that subscribe button. And until next time, please take care.